Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. It's been a while. I hope you've all had a lovely Christmas and a very good New Year. As always, I am joined by Nathan, and this feels a bit weird to be honest. There's all so much football that's gone on since we last recorded. Me and you have shared various match days, to be honest, the majority of which have been pretty disappointing. But thankfully, we're coming into this podcast on Sunday evening off the back of a win, our first win in 4 games, and it's lifted spirits, and I think we needed that. So we are going to be going back through the festive period. We're not going to kind of dilly-dally. We're going to really just skip over. But of course, we'll talk about some of HELLBERG's first real problems as Borough head coach. But before we do so, Nathan, just for the listeners, I mean, obviously, I know we do joke about it sometimes. Me and Nathan do talk in between podcasts, so I know that he's had an all right Christmas. But did you have an enjoyable Christmas with friends and family?
Yeah, all good, Chris. Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned there, we had a couple of days in and about Middlesbrough Town Centre watching the Borough, and yeah, it was very nice, albeit the football not too great up until today. It's been a little bit funny as we've been going through the games, this festive fixture list, and we've been making notes on the games that sort of as they happen, and it's like negative, 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 and you're hoping just today, obviously knowing that we're going to record, that we could get a win, and it'll all of a sudden be like, okay, we've gone through this bad patch, and now we can look forward once again. And yeah, it's a bonus that Borough delivered today on the first weekend of January.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like I said, we're not kind of going to go all the way back to Blackburn, what just feels like a complete age away now, of course, on Boxing Day, and then work our way through and talk about chances missed and each individual incident in each individual game. To be honest, because those games really grouped in, and of course we're talking about Blackburn, Hull, and Derby, there was such similar themes in terms of the performances and also just injuries cropping up here, there, and everywhere, that it's probably better to just talk about them as a whole, really. And I think perhaps not chronologically, but I think in terms of performance wise, the biggest sort of sucker punch, the biggest, probably the worst performance in terms of a full 90 minutes under HELLBERG so far, I thought was the whole performance. The first time that we've been beaten at home under HELLBERG, and it come off the back of Blackburn that was very similar, I felt, in terms of the performance at Bristol City. Plenty of chances. Whitaker had two great ones, rattled the post, and we dropped off again in the second half, which is obviously a theme that we'll touch on because up until today, really, that's kind of been a common theme, even when we were winning games. But yeah, Hull felt like the kind of epicenter of the real wobble that we've had over Christmas because it felt like Hull got their game plan spot on, really, and the fact that we went behind in the first half, I think probably exposed some of the weaknesses in the squad, but also perhaps our game plan, especially in the second half, trying to get back into the game.
Yeah, definitely. It was a typical championship away performance from a team that were sort of the underdog in the game to go away from home to Borough, who are second in the table at the time, good going forward, scoring lots of goals up until the previous couple of games. And Hull find the way forward in the first 10, 15 minutes, get themselves a goal. We gave it away with Alan Brown in our own final third. But yeah, Hull get that goal. It's just a case of we're going to sit in and see what Middlesbrough have to offer. And they were compact in the middle of the pitch, tried to send Borough out wide. And we just didn't have the answers throughout the game, really, to unlock a door. We knocked on the door for long periods in the game with a couple of shots that were just blocked, but nothing really of note in regard of massive opportunities missed in the whole game. A couple of Bergsorg opportunities towards the end of that game, which were half chances and forced Pander to make a couple of saves. But that was probably the one game over this festive period where we didn't necessarily create loads. And as mentioned in the Blackburn game, we're sort of lucky. We didn't really give up too much. There was only one opportunity which Hashi got away and probably should score almost 1v1 with Bryn. And
Yeah.
he puts that wide, but in the whole game, it just felt gutting because we conceded one opportunity in the game. Hull put that chance away, and we couldn't answer the questions that were posed of us, which was go on then, come and break us down. We just couldn't force our way through, which was unfortunate. And then the Derby game was a little bit back to Bristol City almost, where
Hmm.
we dominate the game, dominate chances, create a plethora of chances in the first half. Obviously, for those that don't know, me and you were at the game on New Year's Day at Derby together, so we could sort of get each other's opinions as the game was happening, create two really big chances in the first half with Hackney and Conway. And I turned to you at half time and said, look, these are really poor. We're creating all sorts of chances, which only means one thing. We'll get beat 1-0. And all of a sudden, Derby had two chances in the game. One, Bryn made a good save. Second one, we have a little bit of a defensive calamity with a couple of players falling over, and Bobby Clark puts it in the back of the net. And again, you're stood in and away and thinking, how has this happened? We've created loads of chances and just haven't been able to put them away and haven't been ruthless enough. And on another day, we'd be coming on this podcast and talking about Blackburn in the first half if you blow them away like you had done to previous teams in the four games that we won in HELLBERG's first four, and Bristol City as well, to be fair. If you're just a little bit more ruthless and a little bit lucky, I suppose, with a couple of efforts, then we're coming on this podcast and Borough are probably level on points with Coventry at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems crazy, and I think I know we touched on it, but thank God because I'm not gonna lie, as much as I love spending an hour a week or however long it is usually, I did think, God, it might have been more so the thought of going back to work tomorrow as well, but I did think, oh God, we've got to record today. And then we've produced that second half performance today, and kind of I got my excitement back a little bit. But yeah, it was very similar themes, and I think interestingly, the one performance that Hellberg sort of picked out, or at least looking back in hindsight at his post-match quotes in terms of what he felt the performances and how they'd gone over the Christmas period. He was most disappointed with Blackburn, which, yes, it was 0-0. I think with Blackburn especially, and Hull across the 90 was really poor. But I think the second half against Blackburn was perhaps most disappointing because they're not even holding on to a lead. They are literally, I mean, they're sitting deep as most teams do that come to the Riverside. And I'm saying come at the Riverside. Most teams do, to be honest, full stop, really. And well, it's a talking point that I do want to discuss with regards to how Southampton played today and perhaps why that might have benefited Middlesbrough a little bit. I never really felt, and you can back me up on this, but off the back of the Hull defeat, and it was all doom and gloom, and of course it was going to be. It was another sellout crowd, two sellout crowds back to back. And I did come out the stadium and I said to Nathan, I do think he's still going to get this right. And you kind of said, well, it was pretty poor. And I'm not making any qualms about that. But the performances, although it would be easy to kind of go from one extreme off the back of four wins to basically being on the floor off the back of a couple of really negative results, there has been signs, and I think just the level that Borough got to during those four wins, which have given me enough to think, right, okay, the head coach is never really going to be the problem going forwards. It's going to be on the players, on the end product, on the big chances created and then missed. And I think, to be honest, it made me even kind of want to reaffirm my point after Derby in the sense of, so up until the Derby game, we played every single game in the 4-2-2-2 shape. Now there was a slight tweak to that against Derby, and it was more of a sort of 4-2-3-1, not so much a regimented Michael Carrick 4-2-3-1. The three behind the striker, the four in attack, if you want to call it that, was very interchangeable. And I actually felt in the first half, off the back of Hull, where we hadn't really, not like Blackburn, where even in the first half we created a load of chances, Derby almost reverted back to Bristol City, Blackburn. We had, as you've touched on, the Hackney chance. Conway had a couple. Bergsorg had one. And I think, again, as I say, it reaffirmed my belief and trust in this manager because he tweaked it and that the tweak worked. And to be honest, I think me and you come out the ground and we spoke to your dad as well and kind of said, I really hope that Sen, it sounds a daft thing to say, but I really hope that Sen come off injured because if he tweaked that at halftime and brought Gilbert on, it almost makes me think, well, we've created quite a lot there, and his tactical change and the move away from the 4-2-2 has worked. Now we know that Sen come off injured, and it was a forced change that he had to make. I almost again, in a weird sense, kind of feel almost a little bit more optimism because of that. Because I think, right, he hasn't panicked and changed it again because we didn't score. He's very much still full of his own belief that his principles, regardless of the shape or the system, is going to create chances. And I think across all those games, barring a couple of disappointing second halves, but there's been sections, and I say sections, over the run of difficult defeats, there's been at least one half, all of which have been the first half, really. But there's been large sections of games where I think this is just not on the manager or the head coach at all. And I think that probably brings us to the fact that another theme during all of these games has just been that basically HELLBERG has been absolutely, well, just forced to use his squad to within an inch of his life. And I think it's also probably created a few scenarios for January that we might not have thought of previously in regards to he's shown a reluctance with certain players now that we kind of know, okay, he just doesn't trust them at all. We're on the bones of our arse in terms of even just filling up all of the quarter of 11 players and substitutes, and yet he still hasn't chosen to bring them on. So, yeah, I think in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is throughout the disappointment, and of course there was anger, there was, especially after the Hull game, me and Nathan were sat in Stack thinking, for God's sake, he's ruined a potential great night here. Watching the darts thinking, we could have been in Pot World until God knows what time, but actually we didn't end up doing that. We were in bed relatively early. But yeah, I kind of, that level of optimism in terms of would just need to get to January and then we can add reinforcements. And that, despite the overriding disappointment at the results, I've always maintained I just still think we're going to be okay. And obviously today was great timing because it's even more so kind of made me think, right, we've got a lot to work with here, even in terms of just the head coach and his ability to get these players playing. And they're not even his.
Yeah, totally. I think that my overriding belief and feeling from these festive fixtures is that, okay, the results haven't been completely positive throughout. However, looking at large aspects of the games, we have continued to create opportunities in pretty much every game. We've created at least one big opportunity. In some games, it's been two, three, even four in other games. And it's pretty much just been down to poor finishing, good goalkeeping in some areas, sometimes just wrong decision making in front of goal, and being able to create chances as much as we have in these games. And sort of looking from Bristol City, including Bristol City in these festive fixtures, and the four games before today, we'd created unexpected goals of over five, and we hadn't scored any in those four games. And as I'm walking to the ground today, I'm sort of having discussions with people. I said, well, this either means that we're going to start scoring again more regularly, or someone's getting hiding at some stage. And I'm going to be honest, at half time of today's game, I didn't expect it to be Southampton, but in the end, they were on the end of quite a comfortable beating from minute 55 onwards, weren't they? And again, we'll get on to injuries a little bit later on, but another one today means that Borough have to sort of rejig the back line. And yeah, we're as you say, we're down to the bones of our arse going to today and sort of looking back to New Year's Day. Everyone's in anticipation for Adilson Milanda. Didn't make New Year's Day, made today and straight into the starting 11, which was already a nice feeling for fans to go. And it's been sort of a long time coming that we've been waiting for Adilson Milanda. And as our centre halves have just been swatted to the floor like flies over recent weeks, it's been sort of wishful thinking that he's going to come and be the saviour. But
Yeah.
I think that we've landed on something already, which we'll get into later on in the game. But
Can I
yeah,
just say as well, Nathan, I did find it really funny. And I know like everyone's keen to use the phrase typical Borough, but the fact that everyone was like, right, well, he's available from January, so he's definitely going to play at Derby. And then the team news come out and he wasn't in the squad, and everyone was like, I can't believe it, typical Middlesbrough, of course they've done this. When in reality, I mean, I'm always one to sort of laugh at typical Borough and all of the disasters we've had over the years. But I mean, in fairness, really, it's not as though Borough have just like sort of been waiting and someone in the office in reception's just gone, oh, listen, I'll do it. It's like the homework the night before it's due in. I'll do the homework the night before. It'll be fine. I'm sure they've had every single document signed, sealed, and delivered, sent off to whichever different football federation, and it's basically just completely out of their hands. The international clearance just hasn't come through in time, and yet there was still people in the comments going, "It's a joke. How have they let this happen?" As though it was Middlesbrough's fault. Yeah, I mean, I know the results haven't been bad, but sometimes you can't actually blame the club for literally everything. So that was quite a funny one, I did think.
yeah, it was. But in the team today, and that gave everyone a little bit of a boost, didn't it, going to the game? Obviously, that meant that Luke Ayling was going to have to shuffle to right back, knowing Callum Britton's situation after Derby, and Cali Sen coming off injured, as we sort of knew as well at half time at Derby. That meant that Sammy Silvera was into the team today. And to be fair, Silvera's been one that I've been wanting to see further forward up the pitch because at the start of the season he came in. There was a lot of scepticism from us too, as well, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that he performed pretty well in those opening five or so fixtures before Target came in. And okay, he's played in dribs and drabs throughout the season, but hasn't really been given much of an opportunity since since HELLBERG came in, really, if we're honest. And with McGree's injury and playing certain players and certain profiles in that left attacking midfield role, thought that Silvera could possibly do a job out there if you wanted more of a direct winger, especially considering Mike Hamilton's being given a go out there. And
Yeah, oh my God.
I'd put
We,
Silvera over the pecking order over him.
we, well, I can't believe that. That'd be like erased from my brain, to be honest. I can't believe that we've just gone through all the festive fixtures and haven't quite touched on the absolute shock. I'm amazed my phone survived it, to be honest. It just fell through my hands and I thought, surely that's not who I think it is in the Blackburn starting 11. But yeah, let's not go back to that ever again. Unless it's a quiz question in a Borough pub quiz in about 50 years' time. Like, who was the random player that only made one start during Borough's promotion winning season? Yeah, sorry, I've been sidetracked. That just really caught me off guard again.
Yeah. Well, Silvera into the 11 today and sort of wondering whether Borough would go with something similar to Derby, where it was Conway off the left, Bergzorg as the nine, Silvera possibly off the right with Whittaker roaming. And to be fair, it was more back to where we thought it would be with Bergzorg off the left and Conway through the middle. But see, we may have to make a change very early on with Bangura going off as well, which meant that Alan Brown came in and played right back, really. And yeah, as you say, we're down to the absolute bare bones, and it felt like it was always going to be a difficult task today against Southampton, who, to be fair, were struggling for form as well before today's game. But you look at that squad, the same as every Championship fan does, and you see some of the names littered around that starting 11 with Armstrong, Fellows, Azaz. Harwood Bellis, other players in that team who you'd just put at the very top of championship players. And you always expect a difficult game up against that level of quality. And to be fair, the first half was difficult for a couple of moments for us where Southampton eventually, in their way of playing, of passing it out from the back and trying to sort of pull Borough's midfielders out of position in order to free Azaz in that gap between midfield and Borough's back line. Free him to sort of get on the transition and drive forward and play to those runners, Fellows down the right hand side, Cienza down the left, and Armstrong up the middle. We sort of struggled in a couple of moments, and they created two really big chances in that first half, didn't they? The first one was a shot blocked off the line, and then the second one, which is the biggest chance of the half, really, which is Azaz tries to play a pass through the middle. It gets intercepted and he gets it right second time. Fellows in behind and 8 yards out, middle of the goal, tonks it over the bar, has to score. And on another day, we could be coming on here and talking about a routine Southampton win if they bury those chances and go into the break 2-0 up.
Yeah, we could. And to be fair, in terms of Southampton creating chances, and they did, and obviously they even did before Borough had taken the lead in the second half. And obviously we'll talk about Big Adilson's huge block and just his performance in general. But Borough also, through their own way of trying to play out from the back, Aidan Morris, he is sometimes a little bit guilty of it. A few hairy moments from him as well in terms of Southampton getting the ball high up the pitch through odd own doing, really. And I think, as you say, going into half time, it did feel like a bit of an impending sense of doom because when we're talking about themes and we're talking about not just the festive themes that we've seen across the games, running across Christmas and New Year, even during the wins, we spoke about relatively early on in the run of HELLBERG's wins when he first took the job. There was an absolute drop off in terms of performances from the first half to the second half. Now, what was kind of worrying me throughout the last couple of games was almost I understood why there was a drop off from first to second half. It was understandable if you're 3 or 4 goals up, you're going to take your foot off the gas. It's just human nature. I know the professional athletes, and it never got really hairy, but there was some performances where you thought, let's not make this a habit. And it did feel a little bit over these last couple of run of games that that was starting to become a habit. It was very much you get to half time and it was like, well, we know what's coming in the second half. It's going to be dreadful. So it makes it even all the more sweeter this afternoon that once Adilson Milanda makes that absolutely monumental block, that Borough, and I know they've come from behind in HELLBERG's first game and won a second half, but even then I didn't feel like it was a great performance. I felt like today's second half was a second half performance to be proud of, to be impressed with, because Southampton played their part, and I think that's something interesting in terms of over the games again, themes that we've seen across the Christmas break. We've come up against teams, whether it be home or away, they've sat in a low block and basically gone, right, come on to us. We'll counter attack you. And that can be that. Southampton, and so they should really, from the level of quality that they've got, a little bit more brave. And of course, I think even if they'd taken the lead, to be honest, they probably would have still backed themselves to go and add another and then a third. Borough in the second half had lots of different openings through Southampton's kind of, I don't want to say that they overcommitted, but just, they aren't a John Eustace side that just sits on their edge of their own box and kind of with three centre halves and heads and kicks it wherever it'll go. So yeah, that was an interesting dynamic. But let's before we talk about that and kind of what unfolded, let's talk about the big Milanda block because it was the kind of pinnacle of a really, really impressive debut.
Yeah, it was. He looked our best player in the first half, defending set plays, really. Everything that came into the Borough box hit Adelson Malanda's head. All 6'4" of him. He's an absolute unit. Obviously, me and you had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of weeks ago. Really nice guy. Yeah, we sort of wished him all the best in settling in. But my God, first game, first performance, he was absolutely colossal. Just really, really good. Passes through the lines were always accurate, always on the money. His recovery pace looks ridiculous. He looks just dominant in duels with, I mean, look, he's up against Armstrong, who's top goal scorer in the division. And I know that with Armstrong, he's a little bit slight, although you could argue that his sort of positive points are his pacing behind. But he was no match for Milanda today. He was an absolute rock, just an absolute brick wall. And that block was just ridiculous, just throwing his body in front of the ball. And to be fair, we turned a little bit Arsenal, didn't we? With the big raw in terms of blocking that. It was almost Gabriel-esque. But yeah, he looks top draw. It is obviously 190 minutes that we've watched
Yeah,
him, and I'm not
it's
going to get too carried away. But if you'd have gave me the option to have that performance today from a player that's just signed for the football club, you've been waiting to see him for 6 months. That performance was everything that I could have wanted from a centre half to come in at the football club. He looked absolutely top draw, and hopefully there's more to come from him because if there is, then dear me, he won't be here too long.
yeah, it kind of was one of them where, and we've been scarred by it in the past, but I think with sort of attacking players and wingers, sometimes everything can just go your way. You know, you just beat your man, or a cross works out, or a shot works out, and you kind of someone makes the debut, and you think, God, what have we signed here? With Milanda, it wasn't only the impressive distribution or the physical duels. It was just the fundamentals of, as you say, there wasn't a corner in the first half where it felt like Milanda wasn't making first contact. His recovery pace. I mean, in terms of Borough's acquisition of Milanda, it was, let's be brutally honest, and yes, it's still one game, but Borough have paid an awful chunk. Since Kieran Scott came to the club, this is Borough's biggest defensive signing by quite a substantial amount in terms of the fee. And a lot of people at the time rightfully kind of went, oh, MLS defender coming over, rave reviews. Dean Smith says he can't believe the Charlotte manager, he can't believe a Premier League club hasn't taken a gamble on him. There's rumours of other clubs, PSV were mentioned. Fantastic. Oh, but we've got to wait 6 months. What? And now Kieran Scott's obviously gone on record and said that basically Borough had no chance of signing him unless they agreed to allowing him to see out the season with Charlotte in the MLS and compete in the playoffs. Even after one game, you're thinking, right, I can kind of see why you've waited. Because, as you say, in terms of a modern day centre back, good on the ball. Well, in terms of for a centre half, not only just his distribution in terms of just keeping the ball and playing good passes, he played forward every time he could, which is so impressive. He's rapid, he's huge, and every part of him, I'm kind of thinking, Jesus Christ, Chris, it's one game, but what have we signed here? It's almost like I don't want to go on record and go too big, but yeah, I've already spoken to different people today, and I think the phrase that I've just used for the most part is I was in awe at his performance. Not only the fundamentals, but the distribution, the passing, and even the passion, really, like you say, when he made that block, that gave him extra bonus points from me. He was sensational, really.
Yeah, there was even one moment in the first half when they played a ball up the line to Fellows, and Milanda just ran alongside him and just smashed him out the way and just like didn't even break stride. Yeah, he looks top draw. Really, really good. A really, really positive performance from a player that's making his first appearance in English football. Absolutely top draw, and just made me feel at ease for long periods in that game. That block, absolutely top draw. And then I think at moments like that, where we've seen three Southampton chances go begging, you're thinking, right, we need to sort of put them away now and make sure that we can sort of break our duck in front of goal and yeah, hopefully get a positive result from the game, which eventually we do. And it's a short corner. Morris over there and plays a ball to Target on the edge of the box. Target, you're sort of thinking, what's he going to do here? Whether he's going to line up to sort of shoot or cross the ball into the box from the edge. And he just plays a really, really nice, incisive pass through the middle of Southampton's players. On comes Whitaker and just neatly side foots it beneath Bazunu. First goal for what feels like an age since Tommy Conway's penalty against QPR. 7 hours of football. Thank God for that, Chris.
Yeah, it did. You could feel the sense of relief in the celebrations that thank God we finally scored a goal. And you say 7 hours, what, 7 hours and 45 minutes, coming up to the 8 hour mark, to be fair. And I think after that, what we have seen under Hellberg is that a lot of the time when Borough score a goal, they'll quite quickly follow it up with another. And I guess in terms of the point I was making earlier, perhaps it may be to do with, and a lot of people talk about it with Arsenal that oh they're only a set piece side, but a lot of the time, prime example would be Arsenal versus Aston Villa. They score from a set piece, and yes, okay, they've scored from a set piece, but then in terms of how that impacts the rest of the game, it opens the pitch up, it opens the opposition up, it makes them come forward and have to come onto you. And that's exactly what happened today, really. And Southampton, like I say, I don't think they're ever going to be a John Eustace side that just sits behind the ball, but it brought them out of their defensive shape. And the second goal, not only it comes from Southampton stepping up, of course, it's an absolutely terrific pass by Luke Ayling and a wonderful touch and finish from Sammy Silvera, in fairness. But it's an interesting point, I felt, that the fact that today was different in the sense of Southampton being a little bit more kind of confident in their own abilities. But as I say, typically now when Borough score one, you almost back them to kind of score another couple of goals in quick fire succession as well.
Yeah, definitely. And how many minutes was it in between the goals? Like 5 minutes in between us scoring the first to second?
To be honest, it felt even quicker than that. I'll tell you exactly now. So 54, 61, 66.
Yeah.
That's when it went
So
three.
blown Southampton away within 10 minutes with 3 goals there. Yeah, it's all about Luke Ayling's pass, isn't it? Silvera sort of checks back and then darts in behind Ryan Manning. And yeah, Ayling plays that ridiculously good pass over the top to Silvera, which it's one thing picking him out, it's another thing executing it. And then to be fair, it makes the pass even better with Sammy Silvera's first touch, which just takes him on his way and sets him into the box. And to be fair, look, it's not the entirely most convincing finish in the entire world, but he gets that strike across the face of goal. And obviously, Bazunu's expecting the shot, but it's into the back of the net. Sammy Silvera's first goal of the season. You actually said at halftime that Silvera's a good finisher. And yeah, sticks that one in the back of the net. And to be fair, at that point, I did feel like, okay, you can breathe out now. It is probably going to open up even more. We've gone 2-0 up in the game. It's almost game done in my head. And yeah, what a nice feeling. And nice to see those scenes once again in front of the South Stand where all the team gather. And to be fair, it was more so everyone running to Luke Ayling than Sammy Silvera, but really pleased for Silvera after sort of the season that he had last season to sort of rejuvenate his career in some aspects, especially rejuvenate his Borough career, definitely.
In terms of Borough's attack and like we've said, quick fire goals and basically things almost clicking once you kind of get that first one. Another goal only minutes later. Aidan Morris is extremely pivotal in this goal. And I think anyone would say it's not just us. Aidan Morris in and around the box. If he's lining up a shot, you might as well just kind of whip your phone out and have a scroll on there, or just look the other way because Aidan Morris cannot shoot. However, in this instance, he does have a meaningful contribution in attack. It's not a shot. He kind of runs onto it from the edge of the box, gets to the byline, and just cuts it back. And I actually think, although it's not the most eye-catching of goals, it's a really good finish by Morgan Whittaker, this one, because he almost stabs at it on purpose, not only to direct it into the corner, but if Bazunu dives, it kind of skips over him because of the fact he's hit it into the ground. And that element of Morgan Whittaker's game is something that we probably, I mean, we hadn't seen all of last season, but this season a couple of times, and especially the goal at the Riverside, his first one in Borough colours against Ipswich, he has developed somewhat of a knack of actually getting in the box and getting on the end of things. And to be fair, that goal actually takes him within one of the league top scorer, Adam Armstrong. It takes him to 10 for the season. Armstrong's on 11. And if you'd said we're going to hit January and Morgan Whittaker's going to be one off top goal scorer in the championship at the start of the season, or even before he scored his first against Ipswich, I think a lot of people would have laughed. And although in games, I think a lot of people would agree, I still find him infuriating. This season, you can't really argue anything other than he has stepped up with his goals.
Definitely. Yeah, he has been the main man for Borough to rely on in front of goal. And as you say there, he's getting into the box a lot more. And you're only going to score goals if you do that. Drift in and sort of make yourself available. And he's, yeah, not just sort of got a knack of getting into the box, but just finding himself in the right place at the right time. But yeah, 3-0 up, Whittaker into double figures. You can't moan, can you? And then from that point, it was funny watching Borough sort of ole Southampton. And
Their heads just went, didn't they, Southampton?
yeah, then obviously we score the fourth, which is again, I know Southampton fans dig him out on social media. He is very much one of their boo boys, but he doesn't cover himself in all too much glory here. The shot's not ridiculously powerful, but he just pats it down, and Alan Brown's there to tap it in. His first Borough goal. And to be fair, don't really know how he's ended up there. I don't know how it was Alan Brown that tapped it in. I thought that it was going to be Conway, and yeah, the run goes on for Conway, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think on this one, the only point that I'd like to make is I'm just glad we've finally come up against a keeper that hasn't got man of the match, to be honest, because I'm fairly certain that Panda got it for in the whole game, and I'm absolutely certain that the Derby keeper also got man of the match. So I mean that says everything in terms of their impacts on games and Borough's chances to score over the festive period. But yeah, Bazunu, he's a dreadful keeper. I don't think any more needs to be said about that. But to be fair, Alan Brown, he pops up and scores. And I think, in fairness to Alan Brown, me and you had been talking about him and talking about his loan spell, even after Derby, and saying that obviously since the emergence of Alex Gilbert in that sort of deeper lying midfield position, he's almost lost his way a little bit. And he's looked a little bit uncomfortable. There's been a few times, even in the whole game, the goal comes from his pass being astray, and Hull then attack from that point. And when we first signed him, one of the real appeals was, okay, he's a little bit of a utility man. And today I actually felt that he was really, really good and solid in the right back role. Obviously, at times that there was kind of between defence and attack, he was almost occupying like a right centre back role. Sometimes it was more of a traditional four, and he was just playing as a right back. But I felt that he was really solid, and the best kind of praise I can give him is, although Callum Britton is arguably been Borough's player of the season as of late, he didn't feel like an absolutely catastrophic miss today by any means. Of course, obviously, absolutely crossing everything that he's back as soon as possible. But yeah, really well done to Alan Brown after a couple of sticky spells and a couple of dodgy performances here and there from the bench. And I think we can confidently say, Nathan, that that was Borough's best second half under Kim Hellberg.
Oh, by a mile. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the best second half performance under Hellberg. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We've mentioned even before poor results that, and to be fair, you marked it in the run of 4 wins from 4, that in the 3 games after Derby, we sort of saw a reasonable drop off in performance. The Blackburn game as well, after Bristol City, was, I think that left a bit of a sour taste because we created a lot of chances in that first half, and then the drop off was most notable in that Blackburn game. We really sort of stunk the place out at the Riverside on Boxing Day in that second half. And to be fair to Blackburn, they did okay in that second half and pressed us quite well and kept us penned in our own half quite a lot. Yeah, that second half performance there was really poor, but it's nice to finally come into a game, or come out of a game, sorry, and think, right, okay, well, we sort of hung in there at times in that first half today, but in the second half, we grew into the game, got our goal, and then didn't just take our foot off the gas because Southampton had offered something in the first half. It was Borough went 1-0 up, and then it was almost a thought of, let's go and get the next one and the next one and the next one. And we were able to do that today, put Southampton to the sword. And in the end, the result is very flattering towards us, but you'll take it all every day of the week. But the 3 points is the most important thing to sort of stop the rot in terms of results and, yeah, get us ticking over once again. And now we've reached a point in the podcast where I can pass over to you to give you a shout out to a member of the Southampton squad today.
Yeah, Finn Azar's absolutely embarrassing. I'm not talking about your performance, by the way. I actually thought that you were all right first half. Second half, not so bad. Full-time scenes, 0 out of 10 from you. And honestly, if I'm a Southampton fan, I'm waiting for him beside the bus. And in the famous words of Roy Keane, I'm throwing punches. Because his little strop at the end of the game, although it was absolutely hilarious viewing for all Middlesbrough fans, if I'm a Southampton fan, I am filled with rage. It was petulant, it was pathetic, and to be honest, it felt like most of Finazaz's performances when he couldn't be asked to turn up in a Borough shirt. I don't really have much more to say.
A lot of people's gripe with him last year was he looked like he moped about. And in the end, with him leaving to Southampton and some of his comments and things that we've heard regarding his feelings about the fan base
Yeah, I
and the
mean,
way that he was
let's have
treated,
it. Yeah, let's have it right. He wanted to go, didn't he?
he wanted to go. And that was sort of born out of frustration, the way that the fan base had treated him. And again, it just goes to show that he's not the strongest character because today his team are up against it. They just absolutely fell to bits.
Let's talk about the squad in general then, Nathan, because throwing it back a little bit, I guess, one of the themes of the festive fixtures is basically that just everyone's got injured. So we've got, as it stands, out Alfie Jones, Callum Britton, George Edmondson, Riley McGree, David Strelitz, Cali Sen, and after today, Alex Bangura. Dale Fry was back in the squad today, which was obviously a huge bonus. I guess what do you really say? Borough are at it again with the injuries. It's worrying. It's to be expected now, but I guess sort of weaving it in with where we are in the year now, the transfer window's open, and it probably has created one or two openings in the squad that might not have previously been on the to-do list in January, and kind of makes you think now that January may end up being a lot busier than what we probably all thought going into the month, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think going into the window anyway, we would have looked at right back cover. Definitely need another centre half. Left back wise, Bangura going down, Target filling in. It's a struggle. Centre mids, to be fair, we're actually pretty okay there. Going back to left back. Lucas Engel tickle your fancy, Chris?
No, he doesn't, to be honest. He doesn't. And do you know what? I'll openly admit that after the Gilbert and after the Alex Bangura redemption arcs that we saw in Kim Hellberg's first few games, I was all aboard the let's just give everyone a redemption arc. Micah Hamilton played on Boxing Day and it just slapped me back down to earth. And I thought, who am I kidding? Lucas Engel wasn't very good when he was here the first time, and Micah Hamilton's still not improved. So, no, for me, Lucas Engel, he can find himself another club.
Yeah, and then obviously attacking areas, you've got plenty of players that are available, but plenty of players that aren't being picked either. Notably, Sonchi Hansen, who played the first game under Hellberg against Derby and has featured in a couple of cameos since then. When we're making changes off the bench, I think he's looking to anyone else but Hansen, whether that's down to attitude and application or fitness or anything else. I'm not so sure, but you can only sort of read into what's in front of your eyes, which is he's not being picked, evidently not fancied. Hamilton picked a couple of times and even off the bench after that Blackburn performance came on today, and to be fair, he took the ball down really well and then tonked one in the south stand. But Hamilton, Hansen, Nipan, you can make a case that okay, he came off the bench today and had a couple of bright moments driving forward with the ball, but Again, I think in the last podcast you asked me specifically about Nipan, but I think that he's been pretty unfairly treated. The Derby debacle was disgusting. Brought on and played right wing, and then changes were made in stoppage time at the end of that game, and he ended the game at left back. It was pathetic. A pathetic treatment of a player and a young player as well. So I'm not necessarily gonna be too scathing. Bergzorg, he gives you something, but it's not regular, and he is very much another frustrating attacking player that you know what you're gonna get. It's very hit or miss, and it's usually miss, and it's usually ball roll, chop inside, chop back outside, ball roll back inside, get a shot off, and it's either back of the south stand, easy into the goalkeeper's hands, or blocked. And yeah, we're looking short of options on that left hand side. Obviously, McGree out injured, you just can't rely on him as good as he is. We definitely need options for the left hand side. Need another option out the right hand side to sort of compete with Whitaker, whether you want an attacking midfielder or an out and out winger, whatever tickles your fancy. And we definitely need another centre forward as well. And obviously, Sen, he did okay at Derby on New Year's Day, ran the channel well. He gives you something in terms of positive running. And I think that he's a relatively good finisher as well, but we haven't seen enough from Sen
Yeah.
for me to give a complete enough view on whether he could be the man or not. And obviously Conway, we know he's the best of a bad bunch in terms of centre forwards. At the minute,
And
can't hit a back door,
and he's also fit. I mean, at
and
the
he's
end of the
fit,
day,
yeah.
like there's a lot to be said about just being available, and I know that's a pretty low bar to pick your team on, but he's there. He's always there, so he's going to keep on playing. And I think his
Yeah.
general play has still been pretty decent, to be fair. So we'll give him that. In terms of outgoings, the obvious one, in terms of like the only real sort of official rumor or transfer link that we've had, is it looks like Dieng's contract's going to be teared up and he'll be joining Hull for free. Bit of a strange one with Senny Dieng, another kind of one of these injuries where he just disappears off the face of the earth, and then it'll just say in a random sort of 10 letter statement, Senny Dieng's left the club, and you're just like, all right, that okay, well, that was nice of him to play a few games in his first season, be half decent, and then just disappear off the face of the earth. But yeah, obviously it's been long enough now where he's played in reserve games. He seems to still train, and yet he's not even on the bench at all. So he's going, isn't he? In terms of Borough's incomings, I think from the noises that we've both heard, it sounds like there is an acceptance and an understanding that Borough are in a real position of strength here and they need attackers. And that is something that they absolutely plan to do. So for me, I think I wouldn't want to specifically put a number on it, but I think you probably could end up seeing at least three attackers join the club, whether that's a striker and a wide player and a 10, or two nines and one 10. I think you're going to see a couple of additions in the forward line, which is obviously exciting given the struggles that some of our attackers have had. And then I'm sure that the rest of the squad will be supplemented as well, depending on exits. What's next for Middlesbrough, Nathan? A trip to Fulham in the FA Cup? I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care. If you've listened to the podcast for long enough, the cup runs, fair weather cup fans, there would be a photo of me in the dictionary. If we go out to Fulham, I couldn't care less. If he plays the kids, I couldn't care less. It's going to be a really big Borough following, so in that sense, there is part of me that thinks, do you know what? Right, okay. Of course, Kim Hellberg's not going to have the same opinion of me as me, but I think it's fair to say you don't play your big hitters in this game. Just wrap them in cotton wool until the West Brom game.
I'm still scarred. And look, I love a cup run, to be fair, but we're in a position in the table where I don't care for this season. Don't care for this season. And as I say, I'm scarred by playing a Premier League club in the third round, and Championship Middlesbrough have one player that is the standout on the day. And in that same January window, they just get ripped off you, like Rodgers for Villa.
Mm.
And we've just signed the best centre half in the world, and I can't be arsed with him being taken off us within the next 3 weeks or so. And obviously Hackney, who he's evidently got Premier League suitors, and if he plays well against a Premier League side, there could be an argument that teams might take a punt on him in January. So look, I don't think Middlesbrough would be in the position where they'd want to sell him either, by the way. But you just never know with Borough.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't kind of come as a shock, let's be honest. But I don't know. We've never been in quite of as good of a position as we are now in the last few years. Of course, especially today with postponements and things like that. You're in January and you're in the top two. So Steve Gibson, find them extra pennies down the back of the sofa like you usually do when we're going well. And yeah, let's hope we can kick on. But yeah, I think to be honest, Nathan, that's probably us. We've had our break, our own winter break from the podcast. It's very nice to be back, and especially very nice to be back after a Borough win. But unless there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Yeah, not too much, if I'm honest. I think the general overriding feeling is performances can't really have loads of gripes over the festive period despite the results. Created chances in games, just haven't been ruthless enough. Today, it was a change, and we were ruthless. We absolutely buried Southampton, sent Finnazar's packing, and we now have the best centre half in the world stood at the back of our defence, the big French wall, and we've got a big away following going to Fulham next week. Don't really care for the result. Be good to see a Rodrigo Muniz goal to knock us out. 1-0, that'll do us, and then we'll hopefully come on here and reconvene next week with a couple of new signings, a couple of outgoings of some players that don't really play too much of a part, and we can build to a FNF at West Brom on the following
Yeah,
week.
yeah, absolutely. I think my kind of final concluding statement would be I've seen a lot of discussion about it this week, but unfortunately, in football, you can't run from the XG Reaper. Thanks to everyone that's watched and listened. Thank you, Nathan, for your time this evening. Please do subscribe. Please do like on YouTube and on podcast providers. It's good to be back. Once again, we hope you had a lovely Christmas and hopefully a very positive new year for Middlesbrough and all of your friends and family. And that's been another episode of the Boropolis podcast, and we'll see you again next week.